We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for the May 2020, I can't believe it's May already, Novice meeting of the Houston Astronomical Society. So we are recording this. We're also live streaming it on Facebook right now. So if you want to go back and watch it again, you can do so on the website, or go back to the Facebook page and actually watch it there. My name is Joe Califf. I'm the president of the Houston Astronomical Society. And tonight we've got a really wonderful presentation on astronomical or astronomy related travel. So let me advance this. We have three speakers tonight. Bill Spizzirri, Steve Goldberg, and Debbie Moran, who is our novice chairperson. So without further ado, Debbie, did you want to go ahead and say anything to start before we kicked it off to Bill? Or?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I believe all of us are well-traveled, but I've asked each person to emphasize a different aspect of astronomy travel. So Bill Spizzirri, I think, has done everything, but he's really brilliant at getting high-quality visits to astronomical observatories. Steve Goldberg has been actually active. Steve and Amelia, I see Amelia there too, have been very active in the administration of the Texas Star Party. So I've asked them to discuss the star parties or emphasize that, and I think he's going to mention a little eclipse travel. And I'm going to talk about the parts of astronomy travel that are like throwing a dart at the map and seeing where it takes you. So that'll be solar eclipses with a little bit more emphasis on the cultural aspect, and astronomical conventions, which are held in different cities every year.
Wonderful. Thanks, Debbie. And before we transition over to Bill, I've got a poll up on the screen there, so hopefully most of you can see that. It's multiple choice. Just wanted to kind of get a poll from everybody here to see if anybody's visited any of the observatories here. So the first one obviously is practically in our backyard, and hopefully people have had an opportunity to do that. But I figured we'd take 30 seconds or so to answer some of these questions, and I'm just kind of curious as to what the breakdown is from the folks here on the call, or on the Zoom meeting, in terms of visiting the different observatories here.
How do you vote?
I mean, it's a great question. How do you vote?
Well, you're presenters, so you don't get a chance to vote.
Oh.
But
Okay.
all the other participants do. I'm sorry.
I've been kicked out of better places than this.
Amelia's not a presenter, but she can't vote. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've been to 6 of those listed.
Very nice. Yeah. So the most popular by far so far is the George Observatory, followed by the McDonald, and then unfortunately 10 or so have not had an opportunity to visit any of these observatories yet, but hopefully after Bill's presentation is done, it'll inspire you to go out and visit one of these places. They're absolutely fantastic. And I'm actually wearing a shirt right now that I got from the top of Mauna Kea at the Visitor Center. So
all right.
Every one of them is unique and wonderful. All right, we'll give about another 10 seconds or so and then close the polls. Excellent. All right, we'll go ahead and end it there. And the winner, the runaway winner here is the George Observatory, and really quite surprising. Yeah, McDonald Observatory, number 2, 47%, and 18% of the voters have visited Mauna Kea, which is, again, a wonderful place. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Bill, and let you talk about some of these observatories and some of the experiences you've had there.
Okay, first thing I want to say is I'm doing this because well, I got a screen happening.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was sharing the poll results with everybody else.
I miss all you guys, and my T-shirt expresses my sympathy. I need my space. I haven't been able to do much, so it'll be my pleasure to do this here. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, right? And this is my screen. And then I have to hit this thing over here and do this, and here we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to be...
Can you take off the poll?
Sure.
All right, does that look okay right now?
We still have the poll up.
I was able to just close it with my mouse.
Yeah, close it. It's stop sharing.
Oh, it's us. Okay, done.
Okay, we all set?
We're all set.
Okay, very good. I was asked to talk about ASTRO-TURISM. All right, what is that? Basically, it's just traveling someplace to go see or participate in something astronomical. Now, very simple definition. I am certain that plenty of you folks have been to way more places than I have been to. All these pictures here are places I've been to, but I know you've been to some, but maybe I can help you out with, as Joe said, inspire you to go do some more. Okay, so, oh, you know, there's some people who, they want to go see a baseball game in every park in the nation. And so they plan like 2-month vacations where they see 2 baseball games every day, and they plan it all out. And that's the only way they can do it. I never planned any of this, all right? I just happened to be in this city or on vacation over there, and it all happened, all right? So this is not any major plan that I have, just the way it goes. All right, so ASTRO-TURISM. First of all, I'm going to give you some categories here. Many, many different opportunities. We'll go through them real quick here. First one, museums. The little picture over there is the Galileo Museum in Italy. I was there when I was visiting my family, all right? Talk about an astro celebrity, okay? It's a huge museum. You see his telescopes, all of his other physics experiments, a great museum. So that's one opportunity for you. Go to museums. We, of course, have a great museum here in town, and they have some astronomy stuff there. Observatories. That picture there is from Yerkes, which I will talk a little bit more about later. Well, you know, it's the biggest refractor in the world in southern Wisconsin. Joe already mentioned observatories. There's plenty of them out there. And I will talk more about that. The Telescope Mirror Lab in Tucson, Arizona, University of Tucson. I'm going to talk a little bit, University of Arizona. A very unique place to go see, very astronomically oriented. They make the biggest telescope mirrors in the world. I'll talk more about that later. So that's a unique spot. There's not a lot of mirror labs out there, okay? Solar eclipse viewing. Debbie is going to talk about that. Am I right? Debbie, is it solar eclipses? That's just one thing. She will talk more about it. Steve is going to talk about the next thing, Astronomical League conventions and star parties. You know, there's no limit to those, the Texas Star Party and things like that. Astronomical League conventions are in a different city every year. When I saw the eclipse in 2017, it was up in Casper, Wyoming. I saw it in Chicago. I saw it here in Texas many years ago. So there's an opportunity for you to think about. Planetariums. Shame on you if you haven't visited the one right here in town. I've been to many planetariums around the country. That picture there is Adler Planetarium in Chicago, which is also a museum, which is also an observatory. But our planetarium here in town, in Houston, is A+ fantastic. It is not second rate in any respect. It is a great planetarium, and they do a great job there. You got to recommend going to see that one. And the next thing I list over there is ancient observatories. You know, for millennia, people have been watching the skies. They build these structures like pyramids and other things specifically to track the sky, various things of the sky. Even back then, centuries ago, when they didn't know exactly what they were looking at, they knew it was important to them, and so we're tracking them. That's something for you to visit. I've had the pleasure of visiting a couple of them. And then last but not least, NASA installations. Not exactly astronomy, but certainly has to do with space exploration. And doggone it, if there's nothing better than a rocket launch, okay? I don't mean when you go to a Hobby Lobby and buy your own little rocket and launch it. I mean, you know, go to NASA or somebody like that. Is there anybody else like NASA? I don't know. Somebody like that, and you get a real rocket launch. It's a great experience, and I strongly recommend that. Okay, so I can talk about this stuff all day, and you think I'm making it up out of my head, but I just want to tell you, I've been to a bunch of this stuff, and so I'm going to show you where I've been. And I'm going to preface this by saying, so if you got any questions about any of these places, I am interested in talking to anybody. Send me an email, set up a phone call. I can talk to you about any of these places or just the concept of going to these. All right. So, you know, I got 20 minutes here, so I'm going to be moving along. I got high-speed internet, so I'll be able to talk fast, okay? First thing, eclipse trips. You can see my cursor, right? Am I correct? You see my cursor?
Don't see it necessarily.
Don't see it. All right. Up on the top, eclipse trips. You see the yellow and gray icon over there, the circle. 2017, I went to saw the total eclipse in Wyoming. It was fantastic. I know a whole bunches of you in our club went all the way from the Pacific Northwest down to the Carolinas. Millions of people saw it, but that's certainly one thing that I had the pleasure of doing. In 1994 in central Illinois, I saw an annular eclipse. Don't shy away from an annular eclipse. I know it's not total. It is definitely different, but boy, if you get lucky and you get a good one, it's a fantastic sight. It's very unique. So eclipse trips are great. The red stars are observatories I have visited. Okay, Southern California, you get Palomar Observatory. Northern California, you see the red star. That's a really nice observatory, a Lick Observatory, okay? The first large telescope whose mirror was made out of glass, all right? And they have reflectors and refractors. It's a really great observatory to visit. They have guided tours, really wonderful place. Oh, let's not forget down here on the bottom, Hawaii. Joe already mentioned Mauna Kea on the Big Island, 14,000 feet high, loaded with observatories. I'll talk more about that later, but also right next to it, you see the other red star. That's the island of Maui. They got a 10,000 foot mountain there, loaded with observatories, top secret Air Force stuff. But there's an astronomy club who will take you up there and show you around. Fantastic observatory to visit. Back in my hometown, Chicago, you see two red stars over there. One of them, right north of Chicago, by Northwestern University, is the Dearborn Observatory, an 18.5-inch Clark refractor. If you don't know what that is, we can talk about it later. It's a masterpiece telescope. I knew the guy who ran it. I spent many, many, many nights there. He's still an astronomy professor in Pennsylvania. Anyway, it's free to the public every Friday night. Oh, and by the way, in case you haven't figured this out, every one of these places I'm telling you about is someplace we can't go right now. Okay, so you'll have to, put this off for a couple of weeks, maybe. Hopefully, not too much longer, but the time will come. And then the other red star, southern Wisconsin, that's Yerkes Observatory, biggest refractor in the world, 1 meter refractor. Another great telescope. They let you look through it. A fantastic observatory. Washington, D.C., the red star, that's the Naval Observatory over there. Interesting telescopes there, a long history. They have atomic clocks there that you can go see. Set your watch, I guess, all right? And so lots of planetariums in our nation. The next thing, the blue icon, NASA places. Okay, you might know, right here in town, we have a NASA installation, Johnson Space Center, okay? Get the level 9 tour, fantastic place to go visit. Kennedy Space Center, of course, go see a launch. Hey, we're gonna start launching from Kennedy again, all right? It's gonna be great. Southern California, Jet Propulsion Lab, they can get guided tours there. And of course, they have a long, fantastic history. Northern California, the blue icon is the NASA Ames Research Center, giant wind tunnel, and all kinds of displays. They do a lot of great work. They're a very interesting place to see. So NASA is an opportunity. And then the black icon is planetariums. I already mentioned we got one in town. Fantastic. I can't say anything more about it. If you go to Chicago, go see Adler Planetarium, the first planetarium in the Western Hemisphere. 1930, the place opened up. And I couldn't go there when I was 5 because they didn't let 5-year-olds in. I had to wait till I was 6. And I was hungry to go there. And I've been interested in this stuff ever since then, that's for sure. I've been to the planetarium in Northern California, in San Francisco, in Eastern Pennsylvania, great planetarium. Oh, New York, Hayden Planetarium, Neil deGrasse Tyson, etc. That place is huge, it's beautiful, it's plenty to see there. So planetariums, there's some astro-tourism for you. I already mentioned the blue icon. Here's the Mirror Lab. There it is in Arizona. And I already talked about it. I'll talk about it more. So these are opportunities. Oh, the green and red triangle, those are on my wish list. No, I haven't been to McDonald Observatory. Thank you very much. Okay. And, some of you may know I've given meteorite talks almost as often as I've had hot meals. Okay. And yet to my eternal shame, I have not been to Meteor Crater in northern Arizona yet. All right? So forgive me, but one of these days, doggone it, when I can travel again. It's right down the street from Lowell Observatory. It's right down the street from the Petrified Forest. I say down the street. You can't walk there, okay? And what the heck, you go to southern Utah, you go to Grand Canyon. So there's a great opportunity for you. Go see Meteor Crater, and maybe you'll see me there if I get lucky. These are places I've been in the US, all right? I've been to some places in other countries. 1999, I went to the solar eclipse, total solar eclipse outside Paris. My wife was kind enough to come along with me. It took her about 1.5 seconds to decide she wanted to go to Paris too. Now, I'm telling you, there's a total eclipse in Paris. That doesn't mean you can go there to see one, okay? You got to go wherever they are, all right? Fine. Down in the lower left-hand corner, England, 2 red stars. The one on the right is the Greenwich Observatory, okay? Right outside London, kind of easy to get to. You take the tube to go to see Greenwich. And, you know, you can put one foot on the eastern hemisphere, one foot on the western hemisphere at the same time. You can't do that in many other places. That's a great telescopes. Hey, the Queen's been there. So you can go someplace that the Queen's been to. The other red star in southern England there is Stonehenge, ancient observatory. It's a long drive from London, but in my opinion, well worth the trip. And yes, it is a solar observatory, so it has astronomical significance. And it's just amazing to see. In Italy, the blue little house over there, there's the Galileo Museum I already mentioned, that's in Florence. There's so much stuff there, you can spend a day there for sure. And it's extremely educational. It's beautifully done. Now, the red and green thing on my wish list is Rome. I had the pleasure of knowing a Jesuit brother, which I know several of you know, Guy Colsomagno, if I'm saying his name right. And he's the director of the Rome Observatory, the Vatican's observatory, you know, the Pope's got an observatory. And he invited me to come over there. I was in Italy to see my family. I was on a tour and I could not make it. The schedule of the tour, I missed it by a couple hours. I couldn't go. So that's on my wish list to make it over there someday. Hopefully you'll get there before I do. Last but not least, in the upper right-hand corner, those 2 red stars, those are 2 ancient observatories you can visit. The northernmost one is Cancun, one of those huge pyramids that they use for tracking the sun. You get the climate. Hopefully you don't fall because it's a long way down. It's a big pyramid. And then the red star by Belize, there is an ancient observatory there for tracking the orbit of Venus. Okay, and you can go right up to it. So there's a whole bunch of opportunities. All right, I say these are opportunities, places I've been to. You got any questions? Let me know. I'm sure you've been to other places, okay. So that's that. So the main reason I'm doing all this is to help you as much as I can, to encourage you, to inspire you, and to give you a few guidelines that I have learned over the years. All right. So the first thing you got to know is some of these things I went to in the 1980s, all right? So possibly the information has changed. You want to go to one of these places, I'll be happy to talk to you about it, but get updated information, all right? I'm going to tell you things maybe about some of these places, but it might be a little old. Okay. Guideline number 1, please forgive me if this is obvious to you, but call and write far ahead. Some of these places are really easy to get to. Some of them are not. Some of them really wish you'd rather go to, they really rather you go to Disneyland instead. All right, they don't want you to come and visit. But if you be persistent and do some things, you can get in. So, but you got to call and don't try to call them 2 days ahead of time. And a lot of these places that ain't going to work. All right, and then research the location where you're going to. Frequently, like you go to an observatory, you go on a mountaintop. There's going to be a lot to see there. You might not have time to see everything. Figure out what's most important to you. Make your list of the highlights, because if you're on top of a mountain, when that bus goes back down, you better be on that bus, okay? So you want to be able to see the stuff that's important to you, so figure out what your highlights are. Okay, I have this saying, not everybody does things this way, but I say plan your travel and travel your plan. When you make a plan, some of these places are hard to get to and hard to get around. You got to stick to your plan, otherwise you can get in trouble. Okay, Not everybody, some people like to, you know, just wing it and take their helicopter up to the mountaintop and see what happens, right? But that's just not the way I do things. My recommendation is to make a plan. If you're going to go somewhere, even on a mountaintop, contact the local astronomy club. Imagine somebody from, I don't know, Brazil is coming to Houston. Who should they contact to find out what's going on? They should contact HAS or FBAC or somebody because we can help them navigate all the things that are to do in town. So the astronomy clubs is definitely something to remember. Here's something I learned the hard way. These private observatories are extremely well funded, and not by tax dollars. They're not overly fond of visitors, okay? So you want to go to Palomar or see the Keck or some other places like that, you're going to have to work your way to get in there, okay? Think about that ahead of time. NASA places, government places have a completely different attitude. Well, that's my next item over there. They are extremely visitor friendly. Give you a guided tour, take care of you, very accommodating. Government, completely different from private observatories. Okay, here is something that has served me in great stead over the decades, all right? Visit the place as a genuine representative of a publication. Be a journalist, okay? Let me think of a publication. How about the Guide Star, for instance? You go to visit an observatory, you're a representative of the Guide Star. Do you want to put an article in the Guide Star about that observatory? Can I come in there and see you? Can somebody show me around? I'm not going to predict your future, but I can tell you it has made more than a big difference to me when I go into places, both government and non-government, to get a much better experience, shall we say. Much better. Something to think about. All right, the next thing, don't be a name dropper. And on second thought, be a name dropper. If you know somebody who works there, if you know somebody who used to work there, if you know somebody who knows somebody who works there, you know, try to use that contact and it will greatly, I assure you, I don't know, I can't assure you, I assure you it has helped me on multiple occasions and it opens doors tremendously, okay? Think about it. Now, maybe that's not for everybody. I found it works. That's all I can tell you. Another thing, consider the your physical capabilities, all right? Not everybody can be an Olympic athlete like me, you know what I'm saying? Okay, don't laugh too much, okay? You're gonna be on maybe mountaintops, you're gonna be out in the desert, you're gonna be in a jungle, I have been, you have been on an island, so you gotta think about what you physically can and cannot do, okay? You go to a mountaintop, you know, you take oxygen for granted every day. Believe me, you go on the mountaintop and that oxygen suddenly tastes so wonderful, all right? Food and water, at my age, you want to be concerned with whether it's the bathrooms and things like that. So think about the physical issues, okay? And then, you know, you're going to go to these places to see stuff, right? However, if it's at all possible, focus on the people there who work there too. I've done this at observatories and at NASA installations and places like that. And if you can, overtly interview them and video your interview with them, your interview with them. It will greatly enhance the information that you get, I assure you. And then as the last item, you can come back and give us a great presentation at the club. Okay? Those are my guidelines. Again, you want to talk about any of these places, send me an email. We can do a phone conversation. It'll be my pleasure. Okay? All right. So I only got a few minutes left. Joe, you just let me know and pick me out whenever you want.
You are good, Bill. So keep going as long as you need.
Here's some details. Just about a few of the places I just mentioned, like 3 of them, I think. Palomar Observatory. Okay, it's Southern California. I was in business in San Diego. I called up ahead of time. I made an arrangement to go talk with Gene and Carolyn Shoemaker and David Levy. They showed me around the observatory. Spent a couple hours with them. Fantastic. The 200-inch telescope was the biggest telescope in the world from 1948 to the early 90s when the Keck Observatory opened up. Okay? I say here, you must fight your way in. It's another one of those private places where you're going to have to work at getting inside, okay? But even if you don't get to get inside, it's 6,000 feet up, a beautiful mountaintop. You get a nice view. I could tell you stories. But anyway, there is a visitor center, but there's no guided tour. You're just on your own mostly, unless you know, you got to know somebody and they take you around, and like I did. You're lucky. So you see pictures here of the Shoemakers and Levy, and here's the 200-inch telescope. This is not the oh, you can't see it. The long horizontal white tube is not the telescope. The vertical cage in the middle of the picture is the telescope. The white disc on the bottom is the 200-inch mirror. I was fortunate enough to get inside the dome there. That's another story. And then they have other big telescopes and small telescopes there. So that's a great place. The next is the VLA, the Very Large Array. Southern New Mexico, a long car ride in the desert. You got to think about that depending on where you're coming from. I came from El Paso. That was a long car ride. They have a visitor center, but there is no guided tour. You're just on your own. But it is a very unique place, okay? You got 27 dishes there, 80 meters across. You're not going to see this anyplace else on this planet that I know of. And one of them is, they have it set up so that one of these dishes, you walk right up to it. It's so close you can hear the electronics humming inside, all right? And so you get to see, look at all this, all these equipment, and the little lady on the bottom of the picture there is in the gift shop. This is the focus of the entire human race for radio telescope related gifts, okay? You're not gonna find anywhere else a sweet lady who will sell you all kind of stuff. And you will not be making any cell phone calls while you're over there, okay? Radio noise is something they're really not too cool with. They got no sense of humor about that. They only let only certain kind of cars within a certain distance from the place as far as that goes. So the VLA, not too far from Texas, road trip, right? I would highly recommend it. Next, I already mentioned the Mirror Lab. These are some pictures from the Mirror Lab. Tucson, Arizona at the university, free guided tours, okay? At least, again, that's old information, but fantastic people to take you on a great tour. Biggest telescope mirrors in the world, they're still making them there. Of course, the place right now, as I already mentioned, is shut down, but that's where they make these. They started making 6-meter mirrors. Now they make mirrors that are over 8 meters. You see these pictures compared to the people, you can see how big they are. I think that's about 24 feet across, right? Got to make a reservation. I don't know how far ahead, but you know, it'd probably be a good idea to make a reservation ahead, make an appointment. And you get to see the mirrors, you get to see the equipment, you get to see the machines in the lower left-hand corner over there that polish and grind the mirrors, etc. And you know, this is the place that makes a mirror. If you look in the upper right-hand corner there, they just put chunks of glass in the oven, then they melt it to a couple thousand degrees, spin it for a month, and so the mirror automatically forms, makes a form because of the spin that's very, very close to the ultimate shape of the mirror. And then they have to do the polishing like you see in the lower left-hand corner. So it's a very unique place. It's very astronomical, to be sure, and it's free, and they give you a guided tour. It doesn't get too much better than that, okay? And I think maybe this is the last thing I wanted to show you, and that is what Joe already mentioned, Mauna Kea, the big island of Hawaii. It's 14,000 feet up. I strongly recommend that you get a guided tour. It's isolated, it's a dangerous drive. The rental car companies, if they find out you're going to the summit, they're not even gonna give you a car, okay? I can imagine how many have fallen off the side of the mountain, but or stranded or whatever, or just destroyed because there's a large part of it that's not even paved, okay? Anyway, 14,000 feet up, so the whole breathing thing becomes an issue. Look in the lower right-hand corner, that's me. Tasting oxygen, oh, it was beautiful when you don't have any, okay? It'll be 80 degrees at the beach. It won't be 80 degrees on the top of the mountain. There might be snow and ice at 14,000 feet up. Check your weather forecast, okay? You got all these world-class observatories. On the left with the orange background, those are the 2 Keck observatories. You go on a guided tour, they can maybe get you inside the Keck, all right? Something to think about. Upper right-hand corner is the Subaru Observatory, 8-meter telescope run by Japan. They have guided tours. However, you got to make sure that your guided tour is on a date when it's English speaking. If you go there on a day when it's Japanese only, they will not let you in. I learned the hard way, okay? And I said, I don't care. I can just see the stuff. They said, no, for emergency issues, you know, if the volcano that the mountain is on blows up or something, I guess, you got to be able to understand their emergency information, okay? So they wouldn't let me in. So go on an English day. Unless you speak fluent Japanese, then God bless you. That's fantastic. In the middle, the silver dome on the bottom is the NASA Infrared Observatory. They are extremely accommodating. They'll give you a free guided tour. They're just so nice. They take you right in the observatory underneath the telescope. A great place. So there's plenty of other observatories on the mountain. Plenty to do up there. Okay. Also the visitor centers at 9,000 feet. They will actually have you go there first to acclimate to the whole breathing thing, right? And at that visitor center at night, the local astronomy club will do observing. So you're 9,000 feet up. They got 10 and 12-inch telescopes. They're amateur astronomers. They know what they're doing. However, think about it. You've got to arrange for a trip so that you're on the summit, 14,000 feet during the day, so you can see the observatories. They're kind of boring at night when it's dark. You can't see anything. And then you got to be at nighttime at 9,000 feet with the amateur astronomers. So you got to plan that out, okay?
Yeah, last time they weren't doing it at 9,000 feet anymore. They got tired of the big crowds it was attracting and shut it down. I don't know if they're going to start it again, but last I heard they'd stopped it because the professionals were getting annoyed by the sheer numbers of people turning up for that. Were just getting out of control.
I could understand that. Thank you, Joe. I could understand that. We had 20, 30 people when I was there but I didn't do the nighttime observing. My tour wouldn't allow that. But I could understand. You know, it's, well, anyway, there's only so much room. But like I said earlier, call them up, get the latest information. Okay, I'll tell you real quick. A friend of mine went to Kitt Peak back in the 1980s. He's a skinny little guy. Anyway, he didn't arrange for anything yet. He parked his car. He started to walk up to the mountaintop. He wasn't very healthy. He fainted from lack of oxygen. He was out for a couple of hours, laying in the forest. He woke up and there was animals surrounding him, probably thinking he looked tasty. And he woke up, he scared them away. He finally made it to the observatory and found out it was closed because the pipe in the bathroom broke. And they were a federal facility, so they can't be allowed to be open if there's no bathroom for the public. So call them ahead of time, okay? I don't want to hear anybody fainting anywhere. All right, so that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much for your attention. Again, anybody got any questions about any of these places or any of these ideas, send me an email or something. We can have a phone call. It'd be my pleasure to help you out. I hope everybody stays safe, and thank you for your time. Sorry I went over a couple minutes.
No, you're good. Thanks, Bill. That was a fantastic talk as always. I did have one question.
Yes,
Of the private observatories you visited, which one was the most accommodating and which one was the least?
Well, without a doubt, the Keck, if it was legal, they would just kick you down the mountain instead of letting you in. All right, that's just my comment. Probably might not do that. They had no interest in it. The first time I called Palomar, they said, I said when I wanted to come visit, they said, here, listen to Mr. Click, and they hung up the phone. Lick Observatory in Northern California, extremely accommodating. They're financed by the universities, I think. So I think they would be technically considered private, all right? Extremely accommodating. So, and you know, as kind of was mentioned earlier by Joe, things change too, right? So if I say they're gonna kick you down the mountain, maybe nowadays they'd be nicer about it. There's a visitor's gallery in the Keck, you know, so you can kind of see it, but you don't get too close, you know.
My experience is I'm pretty sure that they would, if the astronomers had their way, they would just quarantine the whole mountain and not let any non-astronomer go there.
Well, that's an option. That's an option, and yeah, maybe they would do it, but you know, That's just not the way things have been working out, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, hey, I mentioned the Rome Observatory, Joe, the fellow who runs it, the brother guy, he said, come on, I'll take you on a tour. Okay,
Really?
I just never, so yeah, there's places that are happy and some that are less happy.
The same person who wrote Turn Left at Orion too, correct?
Exactly, that's the guy.
Yeah, wonderful. Excellent. Well, thanks again, Bill. It was a great presentation, and we'll have some contact information at the end that you could send to the club if people have questions they want to ask. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so as we transition into Steve Goldberg's presentation, I'm going to go ahead and launch another poll here. So Steve's going to be talking about star parties and other things there. So we're going to start our next poll, which is asking you, which star parties have you actually visited in person? So we'll give everybody a minute or so to answer this, and then I'll be sure to end the poll and publish it so people can see it. And then there you can see Texas Star Party, Okie-Tex, the Nebraska Star Party, and others there. So
Oh, shit.
That's interesting. None yet.
I'm seeing them coming in, Steve, so you should be able to see it in a bit. And again, we'll give about another 20 seconds or so to give everybody an opportunity to answer. And of course, with COVID-19 and everything else, that's certainly disrupted the star parties that we had scheduled here in the next few months. So hoping we can get back to that soon. All right, so last few seconds for everybody to get a chance to answer. And we'll go ahead and end the poll. And I'll share the results. So hopefully you can all see that. Of this, the vast majority have not had an opportunity to visit a star party yet. And Steve will talk about this, but there are plenty of great ones within Texas alone that hopefully you'll get a chance to go to once the situation gets better. But in second place, Steve, I don't know if you can see it, but Texas Star Party, 30% of the respondents have been to Texas Star Party.
I see that.
Only two people, 5%, said they've been to Okie-Tex. Nobody to Nebraska, Stellafane, or Oregon yet, but and then several others as well. So really nice, broad kind of participation in some of these star parties here. So with that, Steve, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll listen to your talk about more of these star parties.
Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about star parties. So where can we go? You know, what is a star party? It's just basically gathering a bunch of astronomers for very similar purposes. So we're going to talk about the Texas Star Party, Eldorado, Winter, Stellafane, Nebraska, and Okie-Tex. So let's look at first one, Texas Star Party. It's in the April, May, June timeframe. It's been around since 1979, about 400 people. It's 1 week long. It's in Fort Davis, which is 12 miles from McDonald Observatory. And the different things that they have during the week are lectures, observing programs, ATM, Amateur Telescope Making Awards. So if you build something related to astronomy, a telescope, an eyepiece case, a mount, some accessory, that all goes into that competition. There's an art contest, an astrophoto contest. They have vendors, so bring your checkbook and your credit cards. And they have 2 nights of door prizes. So they have 3 observing fields. The upper is the upper picture here is a panorama of the upper field. It's about the size of a football field, if not larger. In the middle is the middle field, and at the bottom lower is the lower field. The upper field and middle field, all the telescopes are in the middle, and all of the cars and vehicles and tents and trailers are all around the perimeter. So the space in the center is reserved for just the telescopes. And on a good night, this is what you may see. This is by Alan Dyer. He's basically a professional astrophotographer, and he took this in 2015, several years ago. So that gives you an idea of the skies at TSP. Another star party is the Eldorado Star Party. It happens in October. It started in 2003. About 150 people. It's 1 week long. It's in Eldorado, Texas, which is between Sonora and Ozona off of I-10, about halfway to the Texas Star Party. And then here again, they have lectures, observing programs, vendors, door prizes, and such. On the left two pictures, just pictures of the observing field, see how the telescopes are laid out. And one year it was over Halloween, so they went to a winery nearby, and one of the attendees was having fun with the mannequins there. The Winter Star Party is in February. It started in 1985, about 200 people. Again, it's 1 week. It's in the Florida Keys, right next to the water. Here again, like most star parties, they have lectures, observing programs, ATM awards, door prize and such. The skies there are very steady because you're looking out over the water. The water temperature doesn't change as much as land. So it's very steady. There's no atmospheric refraction and things happening with the stars, but it's not dark. That is because the next key up north is the most populous key. I think it's called Marathon Key. So it's not dark, but it is steady. And we say it's in the Florida Keys, it is literally right next to the water. So you can see here's the star party, there's the water. And we were there in 2005. And then down at the bottom is also, just pictures of how the telescopes are laid out. Stellafane runs in August, and it started in 1923. So it's going on 100 years, about 200 people for a week in Springfield, Vermont, way up in the Northeast. Their main focus is telescope making. It was started by a telescope maker back then, Russell Porter, and its main focus is making telescopes. They have lectures, the workshops, a telescope competition, observing programs, door prizes. They even have children and teen activities, which a lot of the other star parties don't have much of, but they have a specific section designed for that. So on the left is one of the observing areas. There's a famous pink house there that they all congregate around. You can see all the telescopes laying around in the field. There's another field down here. So they have 2 or 3 different observing fields that they go through. There's a Nebraska Star Party. It's in July, and it's been around since 1994. About 150 people. Again, it's a week. It's in Merritt Reservoir, Valentine, Nebraska, wherever that is. There's lectures, observing challenges, astrophoto contests, vendors, door prizes. So you see all the star parties basically have the same type of activities. This one here, I took this off of a video, and you see some of the road and telescopes laying out across the mountain. I saw this one picture of the square telescope. I thought that was interesting, so I thought I'd throw that one in. The Okie-Tex Star Party runs in September, and it started in 1984. It's a bigger one, about 400 people a week. It's in Kenton, Oklahoma by Camp Billy Joe in the Panhandle. So when you think of Oklahoma, and it's got that big panhandle out to the left, that's where it is. And here again, they have the same type of activities. So at the top is just a drone picture showing the observing fields. And down at the bottom, here you can see what the skies look like there. Now, another thing, part to go with the theme of travel is eclipse chasing. So why do you want to do that? For just minutes under the sun and new moon together, how often can you do that? So a total eclipse, the maximum amount of time you can have is 7 minutes and 32 seconds, and where the moon covers the sun fully. There's an annular eclipse, which can last up to 12 minutes, where the moon does not cover the sun fully, and it leaves a ring of fire. And those are very interesting to see. You know, it's different, like Bill had said, but it's still interesting. So it's also a good excuse to see other parts of the world. So when you're chasing eclipses, so we're talking about what our travels, Amelia and my travels, have over the years. In 1984, there was one north of New Orleans. It was an annular for 30 seconds. So it was a 30-second eclipse. It happened during Texas Star Party, which is 11 hours driving to the left of Houston. In the middle of the week, we drove to Midland, which was about 4 hours, flew to New Orleans, spent the night with my mother. Then the next day, drove up to see the annular for 30 seconds, drove back to New Orleans, plane back to Midland, drive back to Texas Star Party, and 3 days later, drive back to Houston. So we put a few miles on that day, that week. In 91, we went down to Los Cabos for 6 minutes and 54 seconds. In 94, we went to southern Peru for 2 minutes and 57 seconds. When I say southern Peru, this was like 30 miles north of Chile. So it was real southern Peru. In 98, we went in the Caribbean for 2 minutes and 44 seconds. In 2006, we went to Turkey, and we saw the eclipse in the Mediterranean via boat for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And then just recently in Oregon for 2 minutes. So for 6 eclipse tries, we got 6 hits. So we've been very lucky to see every one that we went on. So for travelers, so here, this picture in the upper left is actually Bill Flanagan's picture that he took of the eclipse. The two on the bottom, left and center, are my pictures. One of Bailey's beads, and then the diamond ring. And Amelia, with her phone, took this picture. If you just barely see, there's a black dot inside the sun. So that's what it looks like. And notice the street lights are on, so it comes on. And when we're on the boat, this is how we viewed the eclipse. So while you're there, we're talking about the travel side of it, what can you see while you're there? On the left is the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey. We'll see that. The lower left is an amphitheater. This is one of the better ones that we saw. Every town has its own little amphitheater. Some of them were in sort of good condition. Some of them were fairly bad conditions. It's about one of the best ones here. You can even see the stage on the lower left, and like the curtain that I guess they came out from behind. So this is one of the better ones. We saw the town of Ephesus, ancient town. Just amazing, the marble work, the condition of it. I forgot how many thousands of years old that thing is. It was really amazing to go see. But in the US, we don't quite have those things. We have waterfalls. And this was at the Columbia River Gorge area. And then in northern Oregon is this big rock in the water called Haystack Rock. And if you see these little objects right down here, those are people. So you can imagine the size of this. And then while we were in Oregon, we had one last place we had to go see. So, any questions? That's our little quickie trip of why go see eclipses.
Excellent, Steve. Thank you. I didn't see any questions coming into the group chat, but I did have a couple of questions I wanted to ask because I've asked them of you before, and you gave some great answers. So, and I'm sure Debbie will have some commentary on this as well. But I was curious, what advice would you give if somebody was asking you what they should focus on the first time they were going on an eclipse trip?
Go with a group. You know, a travel agent. There's a whole bunch of places out there. There's a place out in San Antonio, El Paso. Tropical Sales does eclipse trips. Sky and Telescope, Astronomy Magazine. Go with a group. Don't try and plan it by yourself. There's probably the places you want to go, all the hotels are already taken up, especially the ones, coming up in South America in this year, and then I think one next year. So go with a group. Look at other things that you want to see in that area. A travel agent, see what they're offering, see if there's something specific you want to go to. So, plan it that way, but definitely go with a known travel agent.
Excellent. And the other question I had, what kind of photo equipment should I bring with me for my first eclipse?
Your first eclipse, nothing.
Exactly. I remember you giving me that advice in 2017, and I took it to heart. Absolutely.
On the first one, just sit there and watch it and take it all in. Look at the surroundings. Watch as the sky becomes, gradually comes down. If there are any animals around, see how they react. Birds. I think in one of our eclipses in Los Cabos, we were near a farm, and some of the pigs started acting up. And one of the girls in the group says, the pigs are having a cow. Just, and you'll hear birds will start. start getting quiet. When the sun comes back up, the roosters will start waking up. So also be aware of your surroundings and watch for the 360 degree sunrise colors.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just in one direction, like we see it in the east or the west, you'll see it all the way around the sky.
Watch for the approaching.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
me just said, watch for the approaching shadow.
Right.
If you're near a mountain or something, that's another thing. Sometimes you can see the shadow coming down. Now, I'll tell you a story in the Los Cabos. Some people stayed at the hotel for 6 minutes, and some of us got greedy for the 6:52, and we went up into the mountains, and mountains create their own weather.
Yes.
So that as a totality approached, these clouds started forming because the atmosphere changed. And luckily we saw it, but 10 minutes after totality, it was totally clouded over. Whereas at the hotel, usually at the hotel, they had perfect skies before and after. So that's another thing to consider, is where you're going to go see it.
Hey, Steve,
Excellent.
what
And then-
about the safety issues with viewing a solar eclipse?
So safety issues is have the Mylar glasses
Mm-hmm.
before it starts, so you can look at the sun, see if there's any sunspots. You can watch it as the moon moves across. But then as soon as you see like the last little bit of sun, you can take the glasses off and naked eye. And then when you start to see the sun come back out again, put the glasses back on. So during totality, just use your eyes. No sunglasses, just your normal eyes.
And use them throughout the annulars as well, right?
Yes,
Yes.
annulars. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Question from Jennifer. She said, for star parties, do you camp out the entire time, or can you stay for a night or two? Or can you stay off-site and head over at night? So great questions there, Steve.
Answer is all the above.
Yes.
You can camp there if you want. You can, sometimes there'll be facilities nearby, hotels in town, so you can drive in. Typically, you can leave your telescope up at night, so you don't have to take it down every day. You can stay off-site. And actually, the Prude Ranch is about the only star party that has everything in one spot.
At TSP.
At TSP.
Right.
It's got hotels, it's got bunkhouses, it's got food, it has camping area. So you can do all that, or you can stay off-site in town.
Yeah.
So,
having done both, I can tell you that when you have the opportunity to stay on site, it completely changes the experience. It's a much more immersive experience, and you feel like you're really a part of the star party there. So my 2 cents, I would recommend that.
some star parties, they have places for RVs. So if you have a camper or travel trailer or something, that they will allow that. So you'll be on site.
Excellent. And then Edwin said, Jane wants to know what TSP costs.
TSP cost, the registration is about $80 for the week per person, and it's another like $60 for each additional family member, and that is for the TSP convention. Your housing is different. You pay that for TSP to the Prude Ranch, and a typical motel room right now is about $100 per night per person, includes 2 meals.
Right.
Or off-site there is no charge for the Prude Ranch if you're off-site.
Right. And then they offer the opportunity to tent camp there as well, correct? And then they
Tent camp, go to the Texas Star Party website and you can see the price, at least for last year. You got tent camping, which is $15, $20 a night. They have bunkhouses available, RV slots. So they all have different prices.
Excellent. All right. Well, appreciate the talk, Steve. And again, if anybody has any additional questions, we'll go ahead and get to those at the end of the talk. If you want to ask those, go ahead and do so in the chat room. So thanks a bunch, Steve.
Okay.
All right. And as we get to our last speaker, Debbie Moran, I wanted to put up our last poll here. So we'll take about a minute. These should be pretty easy. So have you ever seen a total solar eclipse? This is total. So not many people travel that I know of for annulars, but they're fantastic as well. And the second one is, have you ever attended an Astronomical League convention? So as members of the Houston Astronomical Society, you're also a member of the Astronomical League, and every year they have conventions which want to say the one in 2017, Cheyenne, was probably the most popular one, at least in the last 10 years or so, given the fact that it was set to coincide with the eclipse. But we'll go ahead and take about another 20 seconds to answer these questions. Some interesting answers, yeah. And then if you have seen an annular total eclipse, kind of curious to hear what people have to say about that. I've never seen one of those myself, but we'll go ahead and get to that at the end of Debbie's talk. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll now and then publish the results. And almost 50-50. So 24 people have said that they've seen a total solar eclipse, 26 no, which is higher than I thought it might be. So that's good that people have had that opportunity. And then in terms of the Astronomical League convention, only 4 people who have responded said that they've attended one of those conventions, and the vast majority have not. So Debbie's going to share with us quite a bit of information about those Astronomical League conventions, and I'm hoping she changes your mind about those, and then next time we ask that question, those numbers are a bit more balanced. So Debbie, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you. And you are on mute, Debbie. Let me go ahead and unmute you here. Debbie, can you hear us okay? Debbie, we can't hear you, so you may want to unmute.
Okay, I have to start
There
over.
You go. No,
yeah, sorry,
I can hear you.
Okay, I think I've lost my screen. Is that correct? To unmute?
No, we can actually.
Okay, I can't
Yep.
see it. Hold on.
We can see your screen. Yep. Astro Travel Part 3.
Okay, I got it back. Okay, hi everybody. Sorry about that. So first of all, I've actually talked myself back into going to Astronomical League conventions. The ones I went to are between 85 and 97. And I will get to that at the end of my talk. The eclipse part of my talk is going to be complementary to Steve's. One thing I found about eclipse chasing, if you can afford it, it is a little expensive to go all over the world, is I have definitely ended up going places I probably never would have gone to a travel agent and said, hey, send me to Zambia or Eastern Turkey or Libya or Indonesia. These are places that the sun has led me to. So I was going to concentrate a little bit more on the cultural aspect of eclipse travel, because a lot of it is people oriented. I'm one of those people who never talks to a stranger at home. I'm very shy, but there's something about foreign travel that's very freeing. First of all, you're unusual over there. Everyone wants to talk to you. And there's also something about eclipses that brings people together. So the cultural experience of observing an eclipse with people from a foreign country is amazing, and it's different every country. So one of my most interesting trips was Libya in 2006. And believe it or not, this is actually on the New York Times list of 50 best places to visit in that year, because our relationships were thawing with Gaddafi at the time. He was starting to cooperate more with the West. They have a lot going for them if they could ever get their act together. They had the tourist desert in the West, which we did not go to because of fear of dust storms from lots of sand dunes. They have amazing Roman ruins on the Mediterranean, like entire cities that were just astonishing. Leptis Magma and Sabratha are amazing. And you see Matt Delavois, my boyfriend, here on the right side of the picture. They set up in the middle of nowhere a camp for 2,000 eclipse observers with room-sized tents, flush toilets, showers. And I told my parents we would be out of communication the last day I saw there was an internet tent with free Wi-Fi. So the other thing about going to places like this is Benghazi. And we actually went to this fish market and boat building place, not on the plan, but we were only 17 people. Two of our group had gone for a walk and asked if, instead of doing a city tour, if we could go to this area. So it was wonderful. So now when I think of Benghazi, I don't think of bombed embassies and wars. This is what I see. I think of the people there. I think of the two guys who invited me up onto their boat when I said, hello, how are you, in Arabic, which opened a lot of doors over there. And I think of the beautiful children I saw. The little boy on the right, I asked his mother if I could take a picture of him. That was at the Benghazi fish market. Those were schoolgirls on the left at Sabratha. And they're pretty liberal over there for educating women at the time. It's a shame to see things change a little bit over there. But these are the kinds of experiences I never would have had without chasing an eclipse to that part of the world. This is Australia. Another thing that sometimes happens with eclipses is you serendipitously meet other eclipse chasers. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the two women on the left were women I met on the bus on the way to the Lone Pine Koala Preserve in Brisbane, Australia. And Emma, who's on the right, who's feeding the kangaroo, lives in Los Angeles. Her friend Trude with the camera is still living in the Philippines, and she's become a friend. She actually traveled with us to Uganda. You'll see her there, and we met with her in Chile. So it's amazing how eclipses bring people together. This is our site in Australia. We were staying in Cairns, and the next picture is going to show you why we traveled north from our hotel. So we actually went here during the partial phases. Here you see just a quick snapshot. That's not what the sun really looks like when it's much more beautiful to the naked eye. But this gives you the beauty of the scene at the beach in north of Cairns. I want you to notice on the right side, it's quite cloudy. It's just like Steve was talking about. There was these kind of low knolls in the direction that you would be looking from the sun if you were at the hotel. So the hotel was down the road about 30 minutes to the right. And as soon as that warm sea air hit these kind of low hills, these clouds were billowing up. And it didn't look like you could go north and do much better. But I knew from some flying experience that it might be better over the water, that the clouds might clear out. And that's exactly what happened. So here we are after the eclipse. The person on the far right is the Space Telescope Swiss astronaut who's done 2 of the Space Telescope repair missions. And I actually had to talk them into bringing a bus up north. A lot of the people weren't all that interested. They said, it looks just as bad up there as down here. We'll take our chances on breaking the clouds. It was kind of partly cloudy at the hotel. I finally had to ask him, well, what would you do if it were just you trying to observe the eclipse? He said, I would go north. And I said, then let's do it. Let's take a bus up there. And we did it. We ended up seeing the eclipse. The people at the hotel did not. This is Uganda in 2013. This is the first time I went with a very small group that's not self-guided, but made our own arrangements. So I traveled with 5 other eclipse chasers I'd met on previous trips. And we went through a tour agent that specializes in Africa that was located in Denver. And they arranged everything for us. So we arrived in Entebbe. There was a tour agent there. We had a single guide who took us everywhere. These are the children of Wendy, which is the jumping off village for seeing the gorillas. A good tip on eclipse chasing is there's always a chance of not seeing the eclipse. So far, I've been very fortunate. We try to plan for the best statistical chance of seeing an eclipse as far as where to observe it, as far as weather. But make sure it's going to be a vacation that you will enjoy in other ways, because there's always a chance that you would spend thousands of dollars to go to the other side of the world and not see an eclipse. Now, this particular eclipse, oh, wait a minute, I just want to mention, I forgot about this slide. Any place you go for an eclipse, they're usually ready for it. There's signs, there's advertisements, there's t-shirts. They know an eclipse is coming. On the right is a family that we just sort of crashed their front yard and gave them all eclipse glasses, hoping to observe with them near the center line. We just came to their house. We ended up having to leave them at the last minute because a cloud was billowing up. But you see now that we had hooked up with Emma. That's Emma who was feeding the kangaroo on the right and who traveled with us. This was a very short eclipse. The longest it was going to be on land was 23 seconds. Since we had to flee the front yard of that family, we had an iPad keeping track of how long Totality was going to be. As soon as we got out of the way of the single cloud, we pulled over we were at this 10-second point. But I knew from seeing pictures from a previous short eclipse that you can get an extraordinarily beautiful corona. And that is because normally with a longer eclipse, these beautiful red prominences you see on the edges of the moon come out sequentially. The moon's actually big enough, if you see them on one side, to be covering them up on the other side. But for a very short eclipse, you see them all the way around. This photo was handheld with a digital SLR by Chris Treasel that she took at the last minute, and it's gorgeous. Very similar as far as the inner corona of what we saw with our naked eye. The other thing that's pretty cool about Uganda is that the equator runs through it. Behind me here is a restaurant that's in both the northern and southern hemispheres, and they even have a table set up in both the northern and southern hemispheres. So that's another astronomical thing to do, is to go to the equator and also to the prime meridian, which you can do at the Greenwich Observatory, which was mentioned before. There you can stand in both the western and eastern hemispheres. This is just beautiful photos. You probably practically cannot take a bad photo in Indonesia. The woman on the right is actually my all-time favorite cultural eclipse photo. She was on the roof with us on our hotel in Ternate. This is Victor, Idaho. The first time I tried an Airbnb for an eclipse, which I rented 2 years in advance. And I actually had tried 6 different houses. Nobody knew there was an eclipse coming at that time. I sent them all information for the eclipse. All of their houses were available. With an Airbnb, I like to make sure that the people who are renting it know about the eclipse and that they will not need it for themselves. The last thing I want is for them to resent my coming or pull the house out from under us. So we had a very good relationship with our homeowner, who was a dentist in Twin Falls, all the way to the end. Even when these houses were renting for 4 times as much closer to the eclipse, I offered to pay him. So I couldn't pay him 4 times as much, but offered a little bit more. He said, no, we're very happy to have you. So this beautiful house on a golf course ended up being about $100 a bedroom, and we had people sharing bedrooms. So it was a very cost-effective way to see an eclipse in a beautiful setting. The boys on the right, this is the day after the eclipse. There was their on sale eclipse glasses, which I thought I just had to jump out of the car and take a picture of them. The other thing about Airbnbs, we also tried last year in Chile and had a very good experience with the second person we tried. The first person just disappeared on us. So the second time I tried a super host, and we had a great experience all the way to arriving there. And doing the same thing for Chile this coming year, have a house, assuming we can travel, that's on the center line on the south edge of Lake Villarrica. And I chose Chile instead of Argentina because Argentina's, the observing sites are out in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure. Whereas in Chile, you are between two decent sized towns. There's restaurants. You can actually stay on the center line, live on the center line. There's no villages or anything on the center line in Argentina. So you've got to travel out into the middle of nowhere, no bathrooms. The chances of seeing it are about 70% in Chile, 80% in Argentina. So Argentina has slightly better weather prospects, but 70% is also very good. And finally, I did choose to go to an annular. I've seen 4 of them now. Actually, I think this might have been my 5th. You might choose to travel to an annular in a different country if it's a place you've really wanted to see. So it's not quite as spectacular as a total eclipse. They're very pretty. You can see them occasionally in the United States. But I just had always wanted to go to India. This trip was especially interesting in southern India. 88% of India is Hindu. About 12% is Muslim. We happened to stop at a small mosque to do our observing. We had to leave Coimbatore, which we knew had a high chance of clouds because it's in the mountains, and drove out about an hour and just kind of stopped at the first good spot. And this is the Imam. He's wearing my 2017 eclipse glasses. I brought about 40 with me. A good idea to bring, you can buy them in bulk, 100 glasses, and creates a lot of goodwill. Also, just be sure you tell people how to use them safely and to check for holes in them before they use them. Now, finally, do prepare for April 8th, 2024. Even though Houston's about 3 hours away from the center line, I strongly recommend getting some kind of housing on the center line if you can. So April 8th is a Monday. If you're a working person, usually advice, especially for an eclipse in your country, is to be one of the earliest people to ask for vacation if you can. And because the traffic jams can be so horrible immediately before and immediately after the eclipse, if you have the time, I recommend placing yourself on the center line and having an extra days or two buffer on each side, at least one extra day afterwards to avoid the worst traffic jams. So in Idaho, we did that. The first day there were horrible traffic jams. We left the next day and it was just clear sailing back to the airport. Now, astronomical conventions are wonderful because they are hosted by a different host club every single year. So they will take you to a lot of these observatories and sites that Bill Spizzirri has mentioned, because every club will show you their best astronomical sites and maybe space sites, and also often take you stargazing. There's usually at least one, sometimes more stargazing nights, depending on where they're located. So the reason to go, again, is for this variety of experience. They have excellent speakers and workshops. I learned an enormous amount as a relatively new astronomer from going to astronomical conventions. The other thing is it gives you an opportunity to meet astronomers from other parts of the US. There's a lot of regulars at Texas Star Party, but I see completely different people at the Astronomical League conventions. There are a lot of people who might be columnists or people you've heard of who are sort of luminaries in the astronomy world. Gradually, you'll meet them through Astronomical League conventions. And they're also not terribly expensive. They're not a large time commitment. So they go between, say, you arrive on a Wednesday night, the programs are Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and then you get to dress up for a banquet moderately. They're not extremely dressy, but there's a banquet usually with a fairly well-known speaker. So I just want to show you the variety of experience I had from going to just 6 Astronomical League conventions. My first one was in Tucson in 1985. Here you see a very young Steve and Amelia. They were also at that convention. Of course, one of the things on the agenda was Peak National Observatory. We also saw the Spincast Mirror Lab in its infancy. In fact, it had just opened in 1985 in the basement under the stadium at the University of Arizona. And at that time, they were only spinning 36-inch mirrors. Now they spin gigantic mirrors and multiple mirrors. So they showed us, this is the oven here on the right. They showed us how it was done, all the raw glass, the honeycomb structure they put it in at the time. In the middle is Roger Angel, who conceived of the whole Spincast method. And at the bottom, this is Stephen O'Mara, who's the Sky and Telescope columnist for many years and the home of David Levy. So David Levy actually organized this convention, and this is before he became famous. He had just discovered his first comet in 1984. My next one was in Baltimore. Baltimore is terrific because we went to the Space Telescope Science Institute. We observed Mars with a big refractor at the US Naval Observatory. We went to Goddard, and I actually saw, I had to take a picture of the sign, the Kobe satellite, the one that discovered the background microwave radiation, which confirmed the Big Bang, was still being tested at Goddard in 1986. And then not shown here, we also went to the Air and Space Museum. St. Louis was in 1990. We did get to go up to the Arch. The most fascinating thing there, we were stationed at Washington University, which is famous for its meteorite lab. So at Bill Spizzirri, if you have not been here, this is a must-go spot. I saw my first mass spectrometer, which is how you discover the composition of rocks. They can determine whether something is a meteorite and where it came from. They had the electron microscope going. They're actually showing us individual atoms. And then they had a moon rock under a microscope. The gentleman in the upper right picture is Bob Walter, who gave a wonderful talk about seeking meteorites in Antarctica. And my favorite story from him is he talked about a graduate student running up to him very excitedly with this sizable dark meteorite in his hand instead of a little tiny one. And he told them, anyone can find that meteorite. Madison was the next one in 1993, and for all of you pilot astronomers, it happened to be butted up right next to the weekend or the week with Oshkosh and the EAA Oshkosh, which is the pilot's dream. So I did both the Astronomical League convention, which featured a trip to Yerkes, and then went to Oshkosh afterwards. Kansas City in 1994 featured the Linda Hall Library, which is probably one of the premier science, engineering, and technology libraries. We were holding first editions of Copernicus. We were thumbing through William Herschel's handwritten logs. And I just discovered doing research for this that now they have a lot of these online, so you can peruse yourself through a lot of these works, just going to the Linda Hall Library website. Copper Mountain was my last convention in Colorado. The very first day after we got there, they took us to Mount Evans, which is actually the highest observatory in the United States. It's a couple hundred feet higher than Mauna Kea. It's a almost 29-inch binocular telescope. And there's a little trail that goes up to the top where you can kind of take one step and breathe. And you see me there with some Astronomical League friends. And at that time, I was feeling euphoric. I'm one of those people who gets the euphoria at 14,000 feet, and then the king-size headache started on the way down and lasted all night. And some recent conventions, I just want to show you that sometimes they will key them to important events. Bill Spizzirri mentioned he went to Casper, Wyoming in 2017. So they had the convention and then the solar eclipse. Total eclipse was immediately afterwards. Fred Espenak, who's the premier eclipse authority from NASA, was there. In 2019, apparently they were at Kennedy Space Center to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. And then coming up in 2020, it's been canceled. It was supposed to be in Albuquerque. That will now happen in 2021. But I looked at what their agenda was, and hopefully he can still come then, but they had the Apollo 17 astronaut Harrison Schmitt was to become the banquet speaker. He was going to be there. And then there was a visit to the Very Large Array, and then the usual programs. They have both talks and workshops, so you can learn an awful lot there. And then followed by the banquet Saturday night. And I think I'm going to return to an Astronomical League convention next year. So let me see if I can stop the share, if I can get out of this somehow. There we go.
Joe, is there time for a quick comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, on the subject of eclipses, in about 1996 or something, a friend of mine went to South America. He saw the total solar eclipse. He took movies of the eclipse, but he also took a movie of the people who were watching the eclipse at the time. And to put it mildly, what I noticed is the people went nuts during totality, okay? This was a new experience to me. You see pictures in a magazine, you don't see that aspect of it. And I told myself then, I want to go and see whatever it was those people were looking at, because they were having a good time. Okay? So that's why I arranged for me and my son, we went down to Aruba, saw 1998, and it was fantastic, and yeah, everybody went nuts. So that's an aspect of the eclipse that I think is important. The people during, it's just a fantastic experience, not just looking at an image, it's the total, everybody seeing this together, that is great. And the last thing I want to say is, Debbie, I'm gonna bet you're the only person on this green earth who in the last few weeks used the phrase, beautiful corona. Okay.
This is a good corona, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, I have a video that Celestron took at the 2017 eclipse, and it just shows the people. And I'll post it up on the HAS email list, and I'll let everybody look at it.
Great, thank you.
And I forgot, one of the things I learned before my very first total eclipse, they said to take, even if you don't do video, I guess you can just set up a video camera aimed any way you want. They said at least take a tape recorder, so I could record the sounds of people.
Right. Yeah, it is incredible.
One last comment. There are some people that jump for joy. There's some people that just cry at it.
Yes.
Right, Amelia?
Yeah.
So every one of them that she's seen.
They're very emotional.
They
And
are.
when you look at pictures in a magazine, that doesn't make any sense, okay?
Not
But,
at all.
but that's what I'm saying. The experience with other humans there is extraordinary, and check it out.
Hey, you asked about annular eclipses. So I always thought the best way to see an annular eclipse was to get it right at sunset, where if you could get like a deep red sunset, you could actually just look at it. Obviously not forever, but you know, if you can look at the sun when it's like a deep red ball at sunset, if it's annular, and I managed to get that in West Texas in 2012. So that's, well, it's the colors are rather exaggerated, but you know, it's back
Yeah,
up.
Very
hold it
nice,
farther
yeah.
back, but it's the prettiest annular picture I've seen. And so when I give talks, I use Joe Dellinger's picture. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's a rare situation where the clouds actually enhance your picture.
Right.
Yeah, they were. If you look at the picture just before it, trying to get it to let me go back. Here's an earlier picture where the sun's in the cloud line there. So that's actually the center of the eclipse. Let's see if I do this. Yeah, there you go.
Right in the middle there.
But then 30 seconds later,
Very nice. Yeah.
That's called a money shot, Joe.
the way I took the picture actually was I wanted to enjoy the eclipse and not bother with taking the picture. So I just set my camera up on a tripod, and I set it so that every I think 15 seconds it would shoot a burst of 9, covering like 4 f-stops in aperture. So every 15 seconds, it just went, and then I could just pick out the one that was correctly exposed. And so, yeah, I mean, I was watching the ring getting thinner on one side and the sun coming below the clouds. And then there it was finally a complete ring. And then I was like, uh-oh, is the camera going to take the picture now?
Right.
And then, and I go, yes, I got it. And that's that shot. And then by the time it took the next shot, 15 seconds later, annularity was over.
Over, huh? There you go. Well, hey, Debbie, I don't know. I think you were transitioning to, I think, out of the slides. I didn't know if you had any other comments that you wanted to make before we got into questions for you.
I don't think any comments, but I'd be happy to take if there's any questions. We may have answered most of them, but
I think
the
so,
other thing
yeah.
I thought, I mean, I know it's getting late, but if anyone just had a comment, I think we've been getting some. So anyone else has a travel experience that they want to recommend or a question?
Does anybody have any advice about how to approach astronomy clubs in other countries? Because I went to Australia in 2018 and wanted to look at stuff through a big telescope. And so I tried contacting the Astronomical Society of Victoria. And I did manage to connect up with them, and I did manage to make it to their dark sky observing site. But you could tell they were really hesitant. And I think the only reason I made it was because, fortunately, I managed to go to their club meeting, and then they could check me out in person. And then once I got to the dark sky site and demonstrated, you know, that I knew stars and stuff, then I was fine. But yeah, they were just sort of like, which I understand, but I was wondering if anybody has any advice.
None myself. I don't know, Debbie or
I know
Bill,
that
Steve?
my tour, I usually travel with Paul Maley's group, which is eclipsetours.com, when I want to go with a group. And I know that often as a group, he usually hooks up somewhere along the way with either an observatory or observing group to get some kind of extra astronomy in there. But maybe they're a little bit more comfortable with a group than a single person. I guess I would write them ahead of time, maybe mention that you're a member of a club already. That would probably help.
Oh, I did all that. I mean, I contacted them like 3 months ahead of time, and yeah, and they answered, you know, eventually. But yeah, it was, you could tell they were sort of like, they were a little uncomfortable about it.
Yeah.
The other thing you could see if they have any at the time that you're going, if you could maybe ask them, are there any public events, or do they have an observing site? Some people have observing sites inside the city, like I think Denver has regular events.
Yeah, but I wanted a dark sky site, and,
right.
and they were really, very hesitant to direct some crazy random American to their dark sky site.
You may have just come across a lemon of a group, to, I guess, for lack of a better term. As I've been traveling around visiting other astronomy groups, it's fairly easy if you reach out to them in advance, like Debbie said, on LinkedIn, or I mean not LinkedIn, social media. Exactly what you did. So maybe that particular group was just a little bit hesitant, but I think if you find, if you keep doing that, you may have better results.
Well, their dark sky site was amazing. I mean, it was like, wow. I mean, in the facilities, they had their radio telescope, a 40-inch Dob, domes, bunkhouses. It was like, it made HAS seem like a hick dark sky site.
Yeah. Debbie, I do have a quick question for you. Are you still going to Antarctica?
Yes, I am. I mean, assuming it's still on. I did have put in my deposit, and this is another thing. I wanted to go to Antarctica forever, but I thought I'd wait for an eclipse. I didn't go the last time because my tour was actually, I don't think I have the money yet for that. That's the other thing, is I've gotten older. Some of this, I've been better able to afford this, and I'm so glad I went to my first eclipse in '83 when I got my parents to finance it. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so expensive for 3 weeks. That was a Far East, and it was in Indonesia. We went to 5 different countries. But those memories have stuck with me forever. So I've saved money in a lot of other ways. I absolutely, hands down, consider travel and experience as the best way to spend money. So Antarctica, I saw it was coming up. So I was like, okay, this was when I'm going to go to Antarctica. And this also happens to be, it's the day before my birthday.
There you go.
On Totality.
Excellent. I guess before we wrap it up, there was one more question. Andreas asked, is it too much work to stay off site at a star party like the Texas Star Party? And I'll let Steve, I see you coming off mute there, if you want to answer that one.
To stay off site, I'll talk about the Texas Star Party. Number one, you can leave your telescope up all the time. Of course, when you leave, you want to put a tarp over it to protect it from the weather. If it's on a tripod, you want to anchor it down. But you have to leave your vehicle parked outside. Now, from the upper observing field to the front gate is about a half-a-mile walk. So you have to think about that. And so you can leave your telescope. You never take your eyepieces with you. You got a laptop, take those with you. But you can leave it there. You have to get there, preferably, before dark, park outside. Then you can walk on in up to your scope. There are restrooms there. There are porta potties there that you can use. And like Joe said, he's done both ways, and it's a lot better if you can stay on site.
Absolutely. But not so bad off site that it's not worth going, though.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, you can drive on during the day, visit the vendors, drive around, look at the fields. During the day, it's just that after the lecture at night, you have 30 minutes or 45 minutes to get your car off the site and parked out by the front gate.
Right.
If you don't mind roughing it, the tent camping does work.
Yeah, you can also tent camp if you're into that.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, appreciate Bill, Steve, Debbie, all of the great insight tonight. Great presentation. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Tomorrow night, we actually have another presentation. Our general meeting will start at 7 o'clock, and Debbie will be sharing some of the new developments that she has been seeing and working on here in the Houston area for more sensible lighting. So if you haven't had a chance to register for that one yet, please visit the website, astronomyhouston.org, and find the links there to register. And again, if you do the social media thing, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any questions, you can email us there at info@astronomyhouston.org. So,
text.
I'm sorry? What was that, Steve?
No, no, it was accidentally on. Never mind.
Okay. Excellent. So again, hope most of you can join us for tomorrow night's general meeting. And again, if you have any questions, just email us at that email address there at the bottom of the screen. So thanks to all the presenters again for all the wonderful information. Thanks to all of you who joined us for tonight's meeting and presentation. And hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And I promise it will not be too dry tomorrow.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you all.
Thanks.